Something just came out, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. Not because it proves guilt, not because it changes the legal standing of this case, but because of the timing. Investigators had just spent 2.5 hours inside the home of Annie Guthrie and her husband Tommaso Chioni. 2.5 hours. They arrived with purpose. They moved through the house systematically. They collected items and placed them in brown evidence bags. They wore blue gloves, and before they left, they inspected the septic tank. Let that detail land for a moment. A septic tank inspection in a missing person case is not routine. It is not something law enforcement does as a formality when they stop by to ask a few questions. It is conducted when investigators are pursuing a specific theory about where physical evidence might be found. It is conducted when the search has moved beyond interviews and into something more concrete, more serious, more focused on what may be hidden in an enclosed, concealed space, connected to a property associated with the last known person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. And then investigators left, and at some point, possibly that same night, Annie Guthrie's photos of her husband Tomaso vanished from her public Facebook page. Not all of them. One remained, but the rest, the hikes, the outdoor activities, the images of a couple building a life together, gone. Now, here is the question nobody asked clearly enough. Why that night? Because what Annie did, and when she did it, and what was happening in her life at the exact moment she made that choice, that is not just a social media story. That is a psychological window into the mind of a woman caught in the center of a national firestorm she never asked to enter. And what you are about to learn may completely change how you have been reading this family's behavior. If you want every development in the Nancy Guthrie case as it breaks, subscribe right now and hit the bell. Because what we are about to walk through is not speculation. It is a documented step-by-step analysis of exactly why Annie made that choice, what a retired FBI special agent said about it publicly, and what it tells us about where this investigation is actually heading. Stay with me.
A senior law enforcement source who she said she trusts implicitly, has impeccable credentials, told her that Tomas, who is Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law, or Savannah Guthrie's brother-in-law, may be the prime suspect. And when
Before we discuss why the photos disappeared, we need to understand what they actually showed. Men's Journal documented the Facebook page in reporting from February 8, 2026, just 1 week after Nancy Guthrie was reported missing. The images were, by every account, unremarkable. Annie and Tomaso on hikes, outdoor activities, a couple sharing moments with family. The kind of content that fills millions of American Facebook pages. Ordinary, warm, human. There was nothing suspicious in those photographs. No red flags, no disturbing imagery, no signal of anything wrong. These were not surveillance photos or crime scene documentation. They were memories. A couple documenting their life together in the way couples have documented their lives since social media made it effortless. And yet, the moment Nancy Guthrie's name appeared in national headlines, those photographs stopped being memories. They became material. Think about what that means for a moment. The true crime community does not emerge when a case goes national. It already exists, organized, archived, equipped with screenshots and forums and Discord servers full of people who spend their time investigating cases that professionals are still working. These are not trained investigators. They are not bound by the ethical standards of law enforcement. They are citizens with internet connections and pattern-seeking minds and the unshakable belief that they can find what experts have missed. And the first thing they do when a case breaks is archive everything publicly available before it disappears. Every photo of Tomaso on a hiking trail became a behavioral profile to be analyzed. Every family image became a suspect dossier to be discussed. A man smiling in a photograph became evidence of either guilt or suspicious calm, depending on which theory the viewer had already chosen to believe. This is the trap every family member in a national case falls into. Once your name is connected to the story, nothing in your life is permitted to be innocent. A hiking photo becomes an alibi question. A shared meal becomes a relationship analysis. A smile becomes either proof of guilt or proof of indifference. The photographs were not deleted because they showed something damning. They were deleted because they existed. And in the environment surrounding this case, existence was enough. But here is where it gets more specific, more deliberate, more revealing. To understand why Annie made her choice, you have to understand what had happened in the hours before she made it. Investigators had executed a comprehensive search of Annie and Tommaso's home. This was a consensual search, meaning Annie and Tomaso did not require law enforcement to obtain a warrant. They opened the door. They stepped back. They cooperated fully with every request. This is legally and practically significant. Every American citizen has a constitutional right to refuse a warrantless search. Annie and Tomaso chose not to exercise that right. They let investigators in. They waited while agents moved through their private spaces, their rooms, their belongings, for 2.5 hours. And they allowed the septic tank to be inspected. I want to be precise about what that tells us. In missing person investigations, forensic priorities are established based on theory. Law enforcement does not randomly inspect enclosed structures on a property. They inspect them when the evidence, the timeline, or the behavioral profile of the case leads them to a specific question about a specific location. A septic tank inspection means investigators were asking a specific question. What that question was, what theory it reflected, has not been publicly confirmed. What is confirmed is that investigators asked it, Annie and Tomaso consented to it, and when agents left the property, they were carrying brown evidence bags. A former CIA officer and FBI special agent who reviewed footage from outside the home confirmed the bags were consistent with standard evidence packaging and that the agents were equipped with evidence processing tools. The specific contents of those bags remain unknown to the public. What is known is this: the search was serious. It lasted 2.5 hours. It involved physical evidence collection. It included a septic tank inspection. And it was all done with the full cooperation of the people whose home it was. Now, consider the emotional reality of what that day felt like for Annie Guthrie. Her mother is missing. Her husband is the last confirmed person to have seen her alive. Investigators have spent 2.5 hours inside her home, carrying evidence bags out through her front door. She has watched agents in blue gloves walk past her into the most private spaces of her life. She does not know what they found, or what conclusions they are drawing, or what comes next. And she opens her phone, and she looks at her Facebook page, and she sees her husband's face, on hikes, at family activities, in the life they built together, available to every stranger who has decided, without evidence, that he is responsible for what happened to her mother. What would you do? To fully understand Annie's decision, we have to go back 2 days before investigators searched the house. On February 3, 2026, just 48 hours after Nancy was reported missing, a podcast called Drop Dead Serious with Ashley Banfield made a claim that would echo across every platform for months. Banfield, a former television news anchor, stated that a law enforcement source had told her Tommaso Chioni was the prime suspect in Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. She said it flatly first. My law enforcement source tells me that Tommaso Chioni is the prime suspect in this case. Then immediately qualified it with, maybe a prime suspect. The headline that spread carried the flat version, not the qualification. The episode was titled, Stunning New Twist. Now I want you to think about what that claim actually was and what it was not. It was not a statement from law enforcement. It was not made under oath. It was not supported by any official communication from any agency working the case. It was an unnamed source speaking to a podcast host who attributed it publicly on a nationally distributed platform. And it attached the word suspect to a man, Tommaso Chioni, a biology teacher and bassist in a local Tucson band called Early Black, who had cooperated with every request investigators had made. Once that word is attached to a name in a national case, it follows that person everywhere. It populates search results. It circulates in social media threads. It lives in the minds of everyone who heard the claim, even people who later heard the denial. The response from law enforcement was direct. At a press conference on February 5th, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos called Banfield's report reckless. It is really kind of reckless to report that someone is a suspect when they could very well be a victim. He was explicit. We do not have anybody listed as a suspect. And then he said something that should have landed harder than it did. You could actually be doing some damage to the case, but you could do some damage to that individual too. Social media is kind of an ugly world sometimes. The damage, of course, was already done. The Banfield accusation did not stay online. What had been digital harassment crossed into physical space. True crime content creators and independent live streamers began appearing in Annie and Tommaso's neighborhood. They filmed the house. They confronted residents. They treated a quiet street in Tucson, Arizona like a crime scene tour, despite the fact that every law enforcement agency working the case had cleared the couple. By day 78 of the investigation, Annie and Tomaso had posted a no trespassing sign on their front lawn. The sign cited specific Arizona statute, ARS 13-1502A1, private property. Violators will be prosecuted. This was not a polite request. This was a legal warning issued by a family that had already been fully cleared and was still being treated like suspects in their own neighborhood. CVOA confirmed that the Pima County Sheriff's Department attended a homeowners association meeting in Nancy's Catalina Foothills neighborhood, where residents reported a YouTuber had been harassing people. The Sheriff's Department confirmed they had received similar complaints from Annie's neighborhood as well, and increased patrols in both areas. As of May 4, 2026, those increased patrols were still ongoing. Let that reality sit for a moment. A family that has been formally cleared by law enforcement. A family that cooperated with every request. Phones, computers, vehicles, homes, polygraph examinations. A family whose neighborhood required increased police patrols for months because of sustained harassment from strangers on the internet who believed they knew better than the sheriff. When you understand that environment, when you understand that every public photo of Tomaso was being screenshot, captioned, shared, and used to fuel theories that law enforcement had explicitly rejected, the deletion of those Facebook photos stops being suspicious. It starts being obvious. But here is what almost nobody covered. A retired FBI special agent, someone with nearly 3 decades of federal law enforcement experience, looked at everything Annie and Tomaso had done since February 1st and offered an explanation that changes the entire frame. And it has nothing to do with guilt. It has everything to do with what happens when innocent people are falsely accused on a national platform. Stay with me. On April 13, 2026, Jennifer Coffin Daffer, a retired FBI special agent, addressed the rumors surrounding Annie and Tomaso directly in a live stream on X. Her conclusion was unambiguous. She described Annie as a woman who works hard, employed at the University of Arizona, no financial problems, no signs of anything suspicious. She said the couple had a beautiful life by all accounts, and she confirmed what the sheriff had already stated: no involvement, no grounds for suspicion, no evidence pointing toward guilt. But Coffin Daffer did not stop there. On May 14, 2026, she returned with something more specific, an analysis of why Annie and Tomaso had retreated from public life so completely, why the band appearances had stopped, why the social media presence had shrunk, why Tomaso was no longer listed as a teacher at his school for the current year. Her answer was 2 words: defamation suits. Now, I want you to understand exactly what that means, because it reframes everything. A defamation claim is a civil lawsuit that alleges false statements have caused measurable damage to someone's reputation and life. It is distinct from criminal proceedings. It results in monetary damages, and it is available as a legal remedy when someone's public reputation has been harmed by statements that are demonstrably false. In this case, a journalist publicly named an innocent man as a prime suspect on a nationally distributed podcast. That claim contradicted explicit statements from law enforcement. It spread across social media and caused measurable, documented harm to the couple's ability to live, work, and move freely in their own city. That is the foundation of a defamation claim. And families building defamation claims do something very specific and very deliberate. They document the damage. Every false accusation is preserved, every screenshot, every video that names them as suspects, every canceled professional appearance, every disrupted relationship, every harassing message, every piece of documentation that shows the gap between who they actually are and how the false accusation made the world treat them. And simultaneously, they reduce new material. Every post removed, every photo privatized, every piece of their digital footprint curated is part of reducing what accusers can weaponize going forward. You cannot build new theories from material that no longer exists publicly. You cannot create new false narratives from photographs that are no longer available. This is not concealment. This is strategy. Defense attorneys and legal consultants routinely advise clients in high-profile cases to curate their digital presence while litigation is being considered. Every post, every photo, every public comment becomes potential ammunition for the opposing side to twist or misrepresent. Removing that material does not erase what has already been archived. The internet does not forget screenshots. What it does is stop the ongoing supply of new content available for speculation. Annie did not delete those photos to hide evidence of a crime. She may have removed them to protect the evidence of a lawsuit. Let me give you 3 scenarios for why those photos disappeared. And I want you to think carefully about each one, because they lead to very different conclusions. Scenario 1. Privacy protection. Annie deleted the photos in response to documented, sustained harassment by strangers on the internet who were using those images to build theories about her husband's guilt. The photos were being screenshot and shared across platforms. Every image was being analyzed for hidden meaning. The true crime community had turned ordinary hiking photos into suspect profiles. Supporting evidence: the no trespassing sign, the increased police patrols. The Covoa reports: the sustained pattern of harassment confirmed by the sheriff's department over multiple months. Contradicting evidence: none that points toward guilt. The deletion did not remove photos from archives. Everything had already been captured. Probability: high. The documented harassment was severe enough that law enforcement was patrolling the neighborhood in response. Scenario 2. Legal strategy. Annie removed the photos as part of a deliberate legal strategy connected to potential defamation claims against media outlets and individuals who falsely named Tommaso as a suspect. The removal was not reactive but planned, part of a coordinated effort to reduce new material while simultaneously documenting existing damage. Supporting evidence: Coffin Daffer's explicit analysis. Reports from as early as February 5th that the family was considering legal action. Megyn Kelly's confirmation that Savannah Guthrie was furious about the Banfield report. Tomaso's absence from his teaching position. The band's halt in public appearances, all documented as potential damage in a civil claim. Contradicting evidence: no defamation suit has been publicly filed as of the time of this video. The legal analysis from attorneys Mark Geragos and Matt Murphy suggested Banfield's specific framing, attributing the claim to a source rather than stating it as personal fact, may insulate her from liability. Probability: moderate to high. The behavior pattern Coffin Daffer identified is consistent with legal preparation regardless of whether a suit is ultimately filed. Scenario 3. Law enforcement guidance. Investigators, during or immediately after the search, advised Annie and Tomaso to reduce their public digital presence while the investigation remained active. Supporting evidence: this is standard protocol in major investigations. Law enforcement routinely advises cooperating family members to limit social media activity to prevent interference with investigative strategy, to protect family members from further harassment, and to prevent inadvertent disclosure of information that could compromise the investigation. Contradicting evidence: no official confirmation of such guidance has been made public. Probability: plausible. The timing, immediately following a major investigative action, would be a natural moment for such guidance to be given. Now I want to ask you directly, which of those 3 scenarios do you believe? Drop it in the comments, because your answer tells me what you think this case is actually about: guilt, legal maneuvering, or the complicated reality of a family caught in a story they never asked to be part of. Let me reconstruct what we know happened, in order, so you can see the full picture. January 31st, 2026. Evening. Nancy Guthrie has dinner with Annie and Tomaso at their home. Tomaso later drives her home. He confirms she is safely inside. February 1st, 2026. Morning. Nancy fails to appear for church. Family reports her missing. Authorities determine she was taken by force. Blood is found at the scene. Doorbell camera footage shows a masked individual near her home. February 3rd, 2026. Ashley Banfield publishes the podcast episode naming Tomaso as a prime suspect based on an unnamed source. The claim spreads nationally within hours. February 5th, 2026. Sheriff Nanos holds a press conference. He calls the Banfield report reckless. He states the department has no suspect. He warns the media that false accusations can damage the investigation and the individual. February 8th, 2026. Men's Journal documents Annie's Facebook page. Photos of Annie and Tommaso together on hikes and in outdoor activities are visible and public. Early to mid-February 2026, investigators execute a consensual search of Annie and Tommaso's home. Duration, 2.5 hours. Evidence is collected in brown bags. The septic tank is inspected. At some point during this period or immediately after, the Facebook photos disappear. February 16, 2026, Sheriff Nanos issues a formal public statement clearing the entire family. Not one single person in the family is a suspect. He states they have cooperated with everything: phones, computers, homes, cars, interviews. He says they are victims, not suspects. He tells the media publicly, "You guys need to knock it off. Quit." April 13, 2026. Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffin Daffer addresses the rumors publicly. She confirms Annie and Tomaso have no involvement. She describes their life as stable, successful, and without financial motive. May 4, 2026. Covoa confirms increased law enforcement patrols in both Nancy's neighborhood and Annie and Tomaso's neighborhood are still ongoing. May 14, 2026. Coffin Daffer posts her defamation analysis on X. She identifies the legal strategy behind the family's public withdrawal. She connects their reduced visibility to the documented damage caused by the false accusation. Now look at that timeline as an investigator would. Where is the guilt? Every action taken by Annie and Tomaso, every decision, every choice, every withdrawal from public life, has a documented, verifiable, law enforcement confirmed explanation that does not require wrongdoing. What you are seeing is not concealment. What you are seeing is a family under siege. There is one piece of this story that should have ended the public debate, and somehow did not. On February 16, 2026, Sheriff Chris Nanos made a statement that went beyond anything required by his position. He did not just update the investigation. He defended a family. The Guthries have done nothing but been 100% cooperative with us. They've done everything we've asked. We've taken their phones and their computers and their homes and their cars and talked to them at length. Look, they are victims. They are not suspects. And then, speaking directly to the media, I am telling everyone, effective today, you guys need to knock it off. Quit. People are hurting. They are victims. I am saying they are clear. We have cleared them. When a county sheriff, in the middle of an active, high-profile investigation, makes a public statement telling the press to stop, that is not routine. That is a law enforcement official who has seen the evidence, conducted the investigation, evaluated the facts, and watched an innocent family continue to be destroyed by a narrative that his own department had explicitly rejected. He later told NBC News why he felt compelled to say it publicly. Because sometimes we forget we're human, and we hurt, and kindness matters. It's every cop's duty to stand up and be that voice for our victims. I'm not going to sit in silence when others are attacking the innocent. That is not the statement of a sheriff protecting guilty people. That is the statement of a sheriff who is frustrated that the truth is not breaking through the noise. And the fact that he had to say it at all, weeks after conducting the investigation, weeks after clearing the family, tells you exactly what Annie and Tomaso were living through every single day while their neighbors were being harassed and their front lawn needed a legal warning posted on it. If you are watching this and you have a sense that this story is more complicated than it looked at first, you are right. And the most important part is still ahead. Because what we have not yet discussed is the specific psychological and legal framework that explains not just the Facebook photos, but every single public choice this family has made since February 1st. Stay with me. Criminal psychology gives us a framework for understanding behavior that looks suspicious but isn't. Here is something investigators and behavioral analysts understand that the general public often does not. Innocent people under sustained public accusation do not always behave the way we expect innocence to look. We expect innocence to be loud. We expect it to fight back, to push against false accusations, to fill the public square with denials and press conferences and emotional statements. We expect it to be visible, but that expectation is wrong, and the reason it's wrong is pressure. When an innocent person is publicly accused in a high-profile case, they face a set of choices that are fundamentally different from what we imagine from the outside. Every public statement they make becomes material for reinterpretation. Every word is analyzed for what it reveals, what it hides, what it inadvertently confirms. Every interview is parsed for inconsistencies. Every appearance is evaluated for emotional performance. Did they cry enough? Did they seem sad enough? Did they look guilty when they smiled? The safest response to that environment, for innocent and guilty people alike, is silence. And that is exactly what Annie and Tommaso chose. They stopped giving interviews. They stopped posting publicly. They stopped appearing at band performances. They retreated from every public-facing aspect of their lives. Coffin Daffer recognized this immediately. A retired FBI agent who spent nearly 3 decades reading behavioral patterns in federal investigations does not mistake silence for guilt when every other indicator points toward innocence. She saw the silence for what it was: protection. "Why are they laying low?" she asked publicly, and her answer was precise: concern over ridicule. And beyond that, defamation suits. The psychology here is consistent. A family that has been falsely accused, that has been harassed out of their neighborhood, that has watched their professional lives disrupted by a claim that law enforcement explicitly rejected, that family does not fight back in public. They document, they protect, they wait, and they remove anything from public view that can be used against them while they wait. The Facebook photos were not the action of guilty people hiding evidence of a crime. They were the action of intelligent people reducing the ammunition available to the people who had already decided they were guilty. Here is a detail that almost everyone overlooked. Annie did not delete all of Tommaso's photos. She kept one. One photo of Tomaso remained prominently visible on her Facebook page after the rest were removed. Think about what that choice communicates. A person erasing evidence does not leave one photograph behind. A person concealing guilt does not curate. A person trying to make someone disappear from the public record does not keep a single image prominent on their public page. But a person managing a narrative, a person protecting themselves from harassment while maintaining their humanity, a person saying to the world, "My husband exists, he is real, I am not erasing him," that person keeps one. One photo says, "I am not hiding him." One photo says, "I am not ashamed of him." One photo says, "I am protecting him from what you are doing with his image." The choice to keep one while removing the rest was deliberate and communicative. It was the act of someone thinking clearly, not panicking. It was the act of someone who understood the difference between reducing ongoing harassment and eliminating a person's existence from the record. You cannot build a behavioral profile from a single image. You cannot create a systematic analysis of someone's habits from one photograph. You cannot find patterns in something singular. But you also cannot claim someone is being erased when their face is still there, public, prominent, visible. That one remaining photo is not an oversight. It is a statement, and it is the most psychologically revealing detail in this entire story. Let me be precise here, because precision is what separates investigative journalism from the kind of speculation that caused this family harm in the first place. What is confirmed? Annie's Facebook photos of Tomaso were deleted or privatized following investigators' search of the home. The search lasted 2.5 hours and included evidence collection and a septic tank inspection. The search was consensual. Annie and Tomaso cooperated without being legally compelled. Ashley Banfield named Tomaso as a prime suspect on a nationally distributed podcast based on an unnamed source. Sheriff Nanos called that report reckless and explicitly said the department had no suspect. The family was formally cleared by the sheriff on February 16, 2026. Retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffin Daffer confirmed no involvement and identified the family's behavior as consistent with legal preparation for potential defamation claims. Increased police patrols in both Nancy's and Annie's neighborhoods were confirmed as ongoing as of May 4, 2026. The no trespassing sign was posted and documented. Tomaso's band appearances stopped following the accusation. What is not confirmed: the precise date the photos were deleted. The title of this episode raises the question of whether it happened the same night as the search. That specific timing has not been confirmed in any public reporting. The specific contents of the evidence bags removed from the home. Whether any defamation suit has been filed or is actively being prepared. What the septic tank inspection revealed, if anything. The gap between what is confirmed and what is not confirmed is exactly where speculation lives. And this case has suffered enormously from people filling that gap with conclusions the evidence does not support. The photographs are confirmed gone. The reason they are gone is not confirmed, but 3 documented verifiable explanations exist, all of which are consistent with innocence, and none of which require guilt. Through all of this, the accusations, the podcast episodes, the press conferences, the deleted photos, the no trespassing signs, the increased police patrols, a woman is still missing. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, Tucson, Arizona, February 1st, 2026. She had dinner with her daughter and son-in-law the night before she vanished. She went to church regularly. She was, by every account from the people who loved her, exactly the kind of person you would not expect to simply disappear, and she has not been found. The investigation remains active. Law enforcement has not closed this case. The reward for information that leads to finding Nancy stands at $1.2 million. Combined contributions from multiple parties who believe she can still be brought home. Think about that number, $1.2 million. That is not the reward pool of an investigation that has gone cold. That is the reward pool of an investigation that remains urgent, that is actively pursued, that law enforcement and the public believe has an answer waiting to be found. The tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. That is 1-800-225-5324. Tips can also be submitted online at tips.fbi.gov. If you know anything at all, about what happened to Nancy Guthrie, you have a responsibility that supersedes every other consideration in this story. Not to YouTube, not to true crime communities, not to theories or timelines or podcast episodes. To Nancy, to her family, to the truth. Call. Here is what we know. Annie deleted her husband's photos. The timing coincided with investigators searching her home. The home they had opened voluntarily. The home they had allowed to be searched for 2.5 hours. The home from which evidence was removed in brown bags and a septic tank was inspected. Here is what the evidence actually tells us. A family that has been fully cleared by law enforcement. A family that cooperated with every request. Phones, computers, vehicles, homes, polygraph examinations. A family whose neighborhood required increased police patrols for months. A family that posted a legal warning on their front lawn because strangers would not stop coming to their house. A family whose professional lives were disrupted by a false accusation that a sheriff publicly called reckless. A family that removed some photographs from Facebook. If someone in your life were falsely accused of a crime on a national platform, if strangers were showing up in your neighborhood, if your employer was distancing from you, if the sheriff had to publicly defend you on television, if you needed a no trespassing sign on your own lawn, would removing photos from social media seem suspicious? Or would it seem like the only sane response to an insane situation? The deletion of those photos was not the move of a guilty family erasing evidence. It was the move of an innocent family erasing targets. Somewhere, someone knows what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Somewhere, a truth exists that law enforcement is still working toward, that her family is still waiting for, that $1.2 million in reward money is still trying to draw out of the silence. Until that truth is found, this story is not finished, and neither is the investigation. If this video helped you understand what was actually behind the photo deletion, share it with someone who has heard a different version of this story. The people closest to this case deserve to have the truth told as clearly and as fairly as possible. Subscribe for every update as this investigation develops, and drop one word in the comments. What do you believe happened to Nancy Guthrie? One word. I read every single comment. I will be back when the next development breaks.